everybody. Welcome to our Fellows Seminar. We are so happy to have you in the room with us. My name is Hannah Neuschwander. I work for World Coffee Research, and I have had the distinct pleasure of helping out with the Fellows program this year, coaching the Fellows on the talks that you're about to hear. So this is a really fun, exciting part of RICO always. It's been dear to my heart for many years. The Fellows program, as you heard yesterday and earlier today, brings some emerging leaders who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to come to RICO. Here they are giving presentations, sharing about their lives and their expertise. They're contributing in a lot of other ways to make this event as special as it is. And they are a really incredible group of people. So what we're going to do here today is hear from them about their businesses, hear from them about their lives. They're going to give these kind of rapid 8-minute talks. We want to have your engagement as much as possible, but we also want to make sure that we get through their talks. So rather than having Q&A after each speaker, we have passed out postcards and pencils. If you have a question for a speaker that comes up during their talk, please write it down. Please note their name so that we know who the question is for, or if you can't remember their name, write down what the topic was, so that when we collect these at the end and have a moderated Q&A, we know who to direct the question to. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Really quick, so because this can be kind of intimidating, right? Standing up here and talking to a bunch of strangers. I want to make us all feel a little bit less like strangers. So I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions so that we have a better sense of who you are. But we don't want to take too much time to do introductions personally of everyone. So can I see a show of hands for everyone who is here from a country other than the United States? Amazing. Wow. Okay. Can I see a show of hands of who here is a coffee roaster or retailer? Awesome. Can I see a show of hands of, oh gosh, I was going to try to do a fun one on the fly and my brain just shut down. Let's see. Who here is, we already did the filter coffee espresso thing yesterday, didn't we? Who's got a good one? Yes. Say that again. You do coffee experiences. Okay, that's a fun one. Somebody else just shout out, what is it that you do? Okay, grower. Awesome. Manufacturer. Awesome. Wanting to start your own business, but you haven't yet. Coffee YouTuber. Awesome. Awesome, a few of those. Amazing. Thank you guys for taking a second to do that with us. I think it makes, it can help with the nerves. So we do have some speakers who are, professional coffee YouTubers who spend a lot of time talking about what they do. We have others who have not really been standing up in front of an audience with a microphone before and might feel a little nervous. So we are going to be the most warm and welcoming audience for them that we can, because that's who we are. So we're going to start with, let me remind myself, these are our wonderful fellows. They're all sitting over here. We are going to start with Raghunath.
Thank you, Hannah, for the introduction. So my name is Raghunath, and I'm from India. I run a company with my wife, Namisha. It's called Aramse. And we have 3 verticals. We do YouTube. We have a coffee subscription that's India only. And we make products, one of which I'm going to talk about today. So I'd like to start my talk with a question. How many of you know what this is? Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is a brewer called the South Indian Filter. And as the name suggests, it's a staple in most South Indian households. But with the way coffee culture is progressing, it's at serious risk of becoming a relic. Now, if it were obsolete, like, say, a cassette or even a CD, then it's fine leaving those objects in the past, right? Not one such object. Mind you, it was an absolute nightmare to tame, and it's not like we had any help, because every household seems to have their own heirloom recipe, which somehow brews the best coffee in the world. So we were very quickly inundated with pseudoscientific opinions. That, combined with several failed experiments, nearly made us quit. But every time we came close to quitting, this thing produced a banger of a brew, and we got sucked right back in. Every bad brew has taken 6 to 8 strands of hair from my head, and it's only now that I'm here speaking at Rico that it feels like the balding was worth it. But in order to modernize the South Indian filter, we had to answer 3 very, very important questions. Number 1, can it make delicious coffee even by specialty coffee standards? Well, I didn't fly halfway across the world to talk about a failed experiment, so the answer will be a yes. But we'll dive deep into flavor in the next segment, so let's move on to the next question. If we can make great coffee, why isn't it more popular? This became very evident when we published our first brew guide to the South Indian filter exactly 3 years ago. We were struggling to help people troubleshoot because all of our testing was done with our South Indian filter. Now, you may be wondering why that's such a big issue. Hang on, let me show you. These are all South Indian filters. And that's just 8 of the 678,000 variants that exist. And it's not like any of them has a unique name. So we were essentially trying to help people who are using a different brewer for all intents and purposes. I mean, if the V60 were in the same boat as the South Indian filter, it would just be called V. And that brings me to question number 3. What can we do about it? And in one word, standardization. Enter Sophie 72, which is basically the traditional brewer, but reimagined for specialty. So for starters, it has a unique name. So if someone says they're brewing with Sophie, then you know it's made of 0.6 mm gauge SS304, has a 72.5 mm diameter curved filter with 127 to 135, roughly 0.8 mm holes, and has gone through 5 rounds of QC. We also included a detailed brew guide and some modern accessories like the WDT and a heat-resistant silicone band to eliminate some of the pain points that existed. So a brewer that was largely restricted to one region of India for the greater part of a century is now used by people in over 15 different countries. So what is the South Indian filter? Well, it's a percolation brewer much like other pour-over drippers, but what makes it really unique is the rare combination of very finely ground coffee, we're talking espresso fine, combined with slow percolation, 6 to 10 minutes, to yield a concentrated beverage. At 5 to 6% TDS, we're bang in between the mocha pot and espresso, but we were convinced that the uniqueness of these brews went well beyond just strength. So we decided to test it a little more scientifically. Basically, what we did is we eliminated the differences in extraction and strength before comparing different brew methods to really hone in on the flavor characteristics and the attributes that each brew method tends to highlight. The way that we did this was to use the same coffee to brew a V60, an espresso, and a Sophie to roughly the same extraction yield percentage. We then diluted down the Sophie and the espresso to match the TDS and the temperature of the V60 before cupping blind. We also used the same grinder, and we used roughly the same brew water temperature to try and eliminate the variables that could impact taste. We did this with Indian and international coffees at varying roast levels, and the results were very, very interesting. So the easiest way that I can think of to describe a Sophie brew would be, well, a good Sophie brew would be if a perfectly dialed in shot of espresso and a very well brewed Oria had a love child. You have rounder, more mellow acidity with higher perceived sweetness similar to other flat bottom brewers. With a V60, you get pronounced, sharper acidity. Sophie brews tend to have slightly less clarity, but more body, more juiciness, and overall intensity of flavor, kind of like espresso. And what really sets it apart is this velvety smoothness that's just delightful. Now, the differences between the 3 brews was not subtle, and that's what got us so excited. And this is in its diluted form, like an Americano. But left in its concentrated form, there's honestly nothing quite like it, And if you enjoy milk-based drinks, then you're in for an absolute treat. The large flat bottom manages to produce syrupy, chocolatey brews with medium and dark roasts in spite of the slow brew times and fine grind size. And this is in line with SCA's paper published in issue 8 of their 25 magazine that the shape of a brewer can have a significant impact on the flavor profile and the notes that are brought to the fore. That, combined with the temperature decline over the slow brews, is what we think help create these unique, lovely cups of coffee. Sophie also works well with Kalita 185 filters and Tricklet filters cut down to size. And as we know, the cold brew market is absolutely exploding. And ice Sophies have very similar characteristics, not the same, but similar, but without the long wait times, worries about hygiene, or the side effects of oxidation. So it's almost annoying that such a versatile brewer has kind of been sitting around in plain sight for so long. But you might be asking, why is any of this important? Well, for starters, it's just another way to make specialty coffee a little more inclusive. For example, someone who doesn't enjoy high acidity coffee when brewed with, say, a V60 or Kalita might really enjoy it when brewed with a Sophie. And so you've essentially expanded the audience for a given coffee. Now, Sophie is just one example of a producing country creating value with a hidden treasure that was ahead of its time. We're talking the OG no bypass brewer. But that's not all. So let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What I'm proposing here is that when a coffee consuming country in the global north is faced with any challenge, be it sustainability, sensory analysis, or even brewing, to name a few, that we look to producing countries too for solutions. For example, we can look to growers and roasters for technical know-how, seek out opinions from influencers there, and also look for design inspiration. Countries are often resource constrained, tend to come up with really creative solutions to rather complex problems. We call this jugaad in India. And tapping into this knowledge base not only gives producing countries access to a slice of the pie at this end of the value chain, it makes the pie larger. In his paper, Quality and Inequality, Ted Fisher writes about distinct value worlds, referring to the disparity that exists with value created at origin and value created at the consumer end. So while he says this in the context of raw coffee, we think it's relevant to the industry at large. Therefore, including producing countries in the narrative means different perspectives generating richer ideas. You will likely come up with solutions quicker or find that they already exist. And most importantly, we start to bring these value worlds closer together. And if that isn't convincing enough, do it for the hair follicles that have lost their life in pursuit of this dream. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely delightful. If you have any questions about the Sophie, the Indian South Filter Coffee Brewer, or Ragnaruth, you can write them on your postcard. Make sure that you write down who the question is for, and then we will collect those at the end. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Gary Johnson. He's going to talk to us about what he's going to talk to us about. I'm going to let him describe who he is.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. How's everybody doing? All right. We got some energy. Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Johnson III. I am from West Philadelphia. I have a quick question. Is anyone from Toddy here in the building? Toddy, thank you for sponsoring us. Just a quick background on myself. I stumbled into this coffee industry just about a year ago. By sort of trade, I am an educator. I teach entrepreneurship at the University of Delaware. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, and I believe in entrepreneurship can be used as a tool to empower all of our community. So really passionate about teaching entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur myself to be able to give back in my own way. So I started in this business by launching a Shopify store and really tried to learn as much about Shopify so that I could teach other entrepreneurs how they could use it for their own businesses. And I discovered this app that would allow me to drop ship specialty grade coffee. I didn't know what specialty grade coffee meant. I just realized it was, good coffee, right? I enjoyed it after tasting it, and I said, you know what, let's launch our own shop. So that is sort of how I got into this space, and I wanted to start using coffee as a way to just educate people about how to start their own businesses. So we started selling specialty grade coffee from all around the world, and really we're just doing that online, but then started getting invited to do pop-up shops and things like that. And through this coffee, we started telling stories of global travel, exploring the world, and how anybody can really start their own business and pursue their own passions. And in doing this, I just started learning more about coffee myself and discovered the fact that coffee has origins in Ethiopia, right? So coffee is historically black, right? And for me, that was a really, really important fact to know, because then I took more pride in the product that I was selling. And not only did I take pride in it, I shared that fact with people at pop-up shops that I would meet. And I live in West Philadelphia, which is a very diverse community. It's somewhat similar to Portland. It is very strange, but not quite as strange as Portland, I must admit. But when I would share this fact with my community members, you would see their eyes light up. You would see the pride that they then had in this product, because they know that coffee is global, right? It is, of course, not restricted to Africa, but when people understand how big of an impact coffee has had on the world, right, they have a sense of pride in that product. So started telling that story. And unfortunately, in our country today, Black history is actually under attack. So in various states across the country, there are laws being proposed to actually limit the education that's being shared to the next generation, right? Limiting the truth-telling about what has happened in this country in regards to slavery, in regards to discrimination, right? In regards to racial and gender equity gaps that exist in this country and all around the world. But with coffee, we're able to tell the truth, right? We tell the truth in every single cup. So we realize that diversity is our greatest asset in this business, because, of course, coffee is produced in many different ways, in many different regions. It's drank by many different types of people and enjoyed in many different ways as well. And diversity is something that brings us all together, right? And coffee is something that's very simple, yet so profound, where we're able to sit down together at a table in a cafe and learn about one another. We're able to come together at places like Rico to discover the truth about all of our origins, right? And contribute to a brighter future. And for me, it's really important to use coffee to build equity in our communities, because where I live in West Philadelphia, it's a rapidly gentrifying community, which you'll learn more about gentrification right after my talk. But I live right next to the University of Pennsylvania, which is one of the top universities in the country. It's an Ivy League institution. And my neighbors live in low-income housing, right? And since embarking on this journey in this coffee business, my neighborhood has transformed rapidly, right? My neighbors are actually, they've already been displaced. They've been evicted from their homes because the landlord decided to sell to, some other company that's gonna put in probably a specialty grade coffee roaster and some more not affordable housing, right? So that's happening not only in my neighborhood, but neighborhoods all across the country. So I believe that we can use coffee as a way to disrupt what's going on and create equity in our community. So I actually want to create my own cafe. I want to roast in-house, and I want to empower my community members to learn more about coffee, create jobs, and inspire them to go on and blaze their own trails in this space as well. So I would love to connect with anyone who's looking to help others start their own cafes and whatnot. I believe that education is how we can include new communities, right? So in part, that's what I'm doing here today. But again, using such a simple product, a coffee bean, right? And talking about the origins of that coffee and the producers, the growers, the exporters, the importers, everything that goes into turning that bean into a delicious brew is something that inspires everyone. So through that education, we're able to give all of our community members a sense of pride, a sense of ownership, and they want to take part in this journey as well. And a key community that I believe is being left out of this conversation is historically Black colleges and universities. These are institutions of higher learning that produce doctors, lawyers, educators, business leaders. And these are institutions that were created because people that look like me could not attend any educational institution that we wanted to, right? So shortly after slavery and during segregation, these institutions served essentially the same function as coffee houses, bringing together, serving as places of enlightenment, teaching the truth about our history, our culture, and empowering the next generation to go and build a better world. And at these institutions, incredibly diverse talent is being educated and empowered. And these individuals need to be in rooms like this because they are the source of the next innovative products. They are the source of building, more equitable value chains. And I'm currently getting my Master's of Business Administration at Howard University, which is based in Washington, D.C. And if you didn't know, our current vice president is actually an alum, proud alum. And the reality is these HBCUs are often swept under the rug, right? Their stories are not often told. They're essentially hidden figures. But I want to use my coffee company as a way to shine a light on the incredible talent that is being produced there. So for every bag of coffee that we sell, we actually donate $1 to HBCU scholarships. And we're raising this fund to be able to empower the next generation again, to blaze their own path and be entrepreneurs, whether it's in coffee or not. We want our community members to have equity in the future. Another point to really emphasize is that diverse suppliers create unique experiences. So for all of us who are getting into the coffee business and launching our own cafes, it's really important to think about where are you sourcing your oat milk? Where are you sourcing your sugar, your water, right? All of the ingredients that go into producing a delicious cup. Think about the owners of those companies. Do you have any Black-owned brands, any woman-owned brands? There are Black woman-owned brands as well, right? So thinking about all of that is really important. And the more you search and study, you'll come to find that there are incredibly innovative products being developed by diverse individuals, but their stories are being overshadowed in a lot of cases. So for my cafe, I wanted to include a diverse array of products and tell the stories of all those entrepreneurs from incredible communities, because I believe that together we can brew a more robust future. So if you're interested in collaborating, partnering, I would love to speak afterwards. My handle is there at Gary Johnson III, and here's a QR code to check out my links and connect with me anywhere online. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gary. Well, from India to West Philadelphia, back home here to Portland, we are going to hear from Dennis, who goes by Cody.
Hi, it's me, Cody. I'm the problem, it's me. I'm glad some of you got that. I also do stand-up comedy. So yes, I did spend $150 on a cup of coffee. I called it research for my master's thesis. Basically, I looked at how gentrification occurred here in Portland, and I used third-wave cafes and specialty coffee as a lens of looking into it. Otherwise, you just go off in totally different directions. First, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement by saying that we stand on the land, we breathe the air, and drink the water that was unceded and oftentimes stolen from Indigenous, Native, and First Nations peoples who lived here for thousands of years, and that the people who lived here in Portland spoke the Chinook language, which is now extinct. That memory, though, lives on in those who remember. And I just wanted to point out where we all are exactly right now here in Portland at the Convention Center. And my research, Kelly, since I do academia, I start immediately with my abstract, which I wish more YouTube viewers did, where I can tell you what happened. I found that gentrification occurred in neighborhoods that had the lowest amount sold in houses, like you could buy houses for $5,000 to $8,000. And now, today, those houses have a median price of $600,000. The peer-reviewed literature has 0 articles that discuss this, which is good for me because I get to do original research. And also, my methodology is very good for Portland because I can use fine granular data at portlandmaps.com, which is a GIS-based website where you can click on each address and get history of real estate data and also tax data. Now, people, when they couldn't pay their taxes, guess what happened? They got a lien put on their house, and then it was repossessed by the city, and then it could also be foreclosed by the bank because they couldn't pay their mortgage. And then what happened? Well, people decided to buy the houses. This was usually around 2008 to 2012 during the recession. Developers would flip it within a few months and then be back on the market with even more price or value put into it. Now, displacement was caused by gentrification. And when I talk about displacement, I mean a place versus displacement, because we don't say people get displaced because that doesn't make any sense. So place has meaning, it has memory, it has history. That's what happens when people are forced out of their houses based upon very historical racist policies here in Oregon, but also in the United States. Oregon was founded as a white utopia. It was written into the Constitution of Oregon when they wanted to apply that they didn't want any Black people, Indigenous, or even Chinese people here. And before this, when the white settlers were coming here, they were bringing their own coffee makers with them. And they came here and grew wheat, which replaced wapato, which is a native plant. So its food has always been about changing society. And you could get, if you were a single man, you could get 320 acres for free starting in 1850. And if you were a married couple, you get 640 acres. The wife would also get the land in her own name, which is unusual for that time. The first coffee cart opened in Portland in 1873, over near where Portland Farmers Market is, or Saturday Market. Farmers Market is different, but you can go there on Saturday if you want to. And further on, we start to see other land uses that come into play. In 1924, we started seeing redlining. Redlining is when certain neighborhoods, it was deemed a high risk. They probably wouldn't give you a mortgage. And if you did, it's where the Black people were forced to live. That's because they were not going to allow them to live in white neighborhoods. In 1955, more policies came about. And this time, this policy said that there could only be one house on each residential lot. Now, Portland Maps is very good about showing this happening because almost every residential lot is 50 by 100 feet. So you get a 5,000-foot square lot, and there could only be one house. If you go into the residential neighborhoods, many times you'll see just one house. There's no triple deckers, no duplexes, really. They changed the laws recently, but it's only one person. So then it's a very specific way of limiting housing. And housing, for many families, is your largest form of equity. And then in 1974, they established the urban growth boundary for the municipalities in Oregon, which said that cities could only expand a certain amount. Again, limited the amount of housing that could be here in Oregon. People could come here and say, why can't we build over there on Salvia Island? Like, that's outside the urban growth boundary. We can't build over there. Now, we started seeing a huge amount of divestment in Black neighborhoods in Oregon, where it just basically the government stopped providing services, and of course, the real estate values started going downhill. In the 1990s, I said that houses could be bought for $5,000 to $8,000. $5,000, you could buy a 1,200-foot square house and just move right in. Now, the reason why I chose not to use census tract data is because it looks at many times at income level. And income level might not be exactly accurate because many families would give their children money to go move out and move into these houses. And they would start just building it up themselves. Now, what followed along into a few more years later, we started seeing third wave cafes. And we say this is like when people started being able to have their own places, it started bringing in their own culture. And these are the books that I use to chart how to find third wave cafes. Thank you, Hannah, it's very useful. And I charted out real estate values within about a 5-minute walk because we live in 15-minute neighborhoods for the gentrified neighborhoods. I haven't driven a car in about 7 to 8 years because I don't need to. And finally, we come to specialty coffee. Now, we all think we know what specialty coffee is. I won't go into a history of it here in Portland, but I wanted to leave you with some questions. Is quality a social construct? Is value a social construct? Is taste a social construct? And how do we get to that social construct through power relations? And specialty coffee is a process. It's not just like something you drink. It comes through many times the exploitation of people, both in origin, but also here in Portland in the history that it came through. And finally, we see that specialty coffee doesn't exist in a vacuum. We get asked a lot of questions, where should I eat when I'm in Portland? It's like, well, let me tell you, you can eat 24 hours a day at great places. But specialty and quality are all very interesting. Finally, is gentrification over? The simple answer is no, it's not. It's spread it out into the suburbs, into the rural areas, and remote locations. Because people are now able to work remotely, and they bring along with them, guess what? Coffee, because they can't go to third wave cafes, so they just make it at home themselves. And that's basically the end of my
Thank you so much, Cody, for that. Okay, so we've been to India, we've been to West Philly, we've spent some time in Portland. We're gonna go now to, oops, my timer's going off. Cody, you finished ahead of time. Good job. Sorry. We're gonna go now to Latin America, and we're gonna think a little bit about the role of women in coffee. Gabriela.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hannah. And thank you for coming. I am Gabriela. I am not exactly from the world of coffee. I am a researcher, and I don't know exactly what I'm doing here, but I am going to talk about care and life support as a strategy to promote productivity. As you know, and many reports told us, women in the coffee value chain have a significant role. There are 70% of labor in coffee production. There is around 5 million of women between 25 million coffee producers. They reach up to 90% in field work, and up to 80% in harvesting activities are done by women. Between 20 and 30% of coffee farms are operated by women. However, women have less access to everything, less access to all productive resources, land, credit, tools, technology, but above all, they have less access to time. Women spend 3 times more on domestic care work than men. There is a phrase, I don't know how to say, phrase in Spanish, cuando un hombre da 1,000 pasos, las mujeres dan 20,000. And these gender-based constraints cause productivity constraints and profoundly limit economic growth and social development. According to IMF, closing the gap in women's labor force participation could increase the world economic output by 35% at least. So it is not only a question of equity or dignity, supposing dignity doesn't have a value itself. It is an economic question. It is a social question. I have some quotes from coffee women producers in Ecuador, where I'm from. They said, muy poco participan las mujeres por miedo, por temor, por costumbre, porque nos pueden mandar a callar. So women have fear. Women have very little participation because of fear, which is pretty sad. They said, por lo general es el marido quien toma la responsabilidad del dinero y la mujer produce y el marido entrega y cobra. Las mujeres no deciden sobre los ingresos, con suerte llegan con el dinero y con la comida. Hay que trabajarlo dentro de la organización. Las familias les dan más terreno, más tierra a los hombres que a las hijas, porque no las ven capaces. We have some data from Ecuador and from all over the world about these differences in all access. There are significant gender gaps at the legal level and participation, decision-making capability, leadership, and empowerment. And the situation in Ecuador is worse in specialty coffee soft chain. These gender gaps were found in the coffee chain in the Ecuadorian Amazon specifically. But what I want to talk about today is not only these gaps and this difference. I want to propose some new paradigm, a new approach, not only to acquire gender equity, but to think about coffee industry. So I think the gender glasses in economics is not only about fashion, it's about shift the economy's priority from profit to sustaining life. It's about care and value. It's about cooperation and also competition. As we heard yesterday, it is impossible to think in the coffee industry thinking only in competition. It is absolutely necessary to think about cooperation. And women are proposing a new approach to economics, an approach who consider, who have an approach, a different approach to necessities. Not just this hierarchical, how do I say, hierarchy approach to the necessities, which says you have to satisfy first physiological needs, and then, only then you can think about your spiritual needs. And it leaves coffee afuera, out of the essential products, for example, because coffee has to do with pleasure, and coffee has to do with happiness, and not necessarily with a physiological or primary need. So I think this approach to economics, in which we have an integral view of economics, se acerca más a la industria del café, is an approach which let us think about not only the profits, but about the life in a wider sense, in which every actor of the value chain main important, and the approach in which care has an crucial role. And care, I want to share this definition of care, who comes from these women, and they are nurses, and they have, as nurses, this primary contact with other human beings and with the activity and the tasks of care. And they say everything, that care is everything we do to maintain, to perpetuate, to repair our world so that we can live in as well as possible. And they also said care implies to realize about others' necessities and to decide to do something to satisfy them, and to do this work, to do this job. And it finally with the act of receiving, the act of satisfying the necessities. And I think care is a crucial word for the specialty coffee industry, because all I have heard these days is about to achieve some point of quality and some special market. And this requires care, to care about all the stages in the chain, to care about all the actors in the chain, because if we don't do that, we could not achieve that quality, and we will never achieve the social goals of this industry. So I invite you to rethink about care and about its possible relationship with this industry.
Gabriela, you did a wonderful job. I know you were nervous, but you did an amazing job. It's my pleasure now to introduce Stephanie Segovia from El Salvador. She's going to kind of help us continue the conversation about thinking about the role of women in coffee through her own story and her own lens. And she's going to play some music.
Can I also play it and then I'll introduce
Se escuchan tristes cantar entre sonantes carcajadas. A veces hasta oraciones preludian las más sufridas. Apresurémonos, llenemos ya todos los sacos de café, que se hace tarde y hay que terminar la tarea al atardecer. Apresurémonos.
Let's take a deep breath. And now, first, because yes, I'm nervous. Second, because this song has a lot of meaning. It really tells the story of the cortadoras de café, and it also tells the story of little Steph in El Salvador dancing this song every other month when we had a musical festival. That's the culture of El Salvador. I'm Stephanie Segovia. I am from El Salvador, but I'm an immigrant, third generation, undocumented immigrant farm worker, currently living in San Jose, California. A little bit more about my background. I am an educated Latina woman here in the United States, got my master's degree in higher education. Also, I have a undergrad degree in Chicano and Latino studies, and that's how I knew there was a problem with coffee. So what you heard was saying, sad songs are heard, resounding in laughter, and sometimes even prayer. The must suffer are the loudest. Let's hurry. Let's take it now. All the bags of coffee. It's getting late, and we have to finish the homework at sunset. The invisible work of specialty coffee, it's women. And let me start with the two women that inspire me and really started coffee. This is my grandma to your right, and she was actually a coffee picker. Maybe we didn't have a business, or maybe we did and we didn't know, but she knew how to pick the coffee, how to dry it, how to process it, and how to roast the coffee, and obviously how to brew the best batches of coffee for the house. And she would do this work when my mom and her siblings would be out of school in November to December. As you know, that's when coffee harvest starts in majority of Central America and Latin America. Then to the left, it's my mom. And my mom actually also worked in the coffee industry, but in the offices. She actually was a secretary for some of the research companies or centers that we had in El Salvador, so she knew the people that cup the coffee, the roasters. This was 1970s. And her last job in El Salvador was actually to work for the company that provided the John Deere and Caterpillar to the producers. But she migrated because she was a single mother in a country that really didn't support women, and she wanted the best for me. She actually started university because due to the Civil War, she had to stop. So we moved, and I'm here. So actually, I came back to the United States. I was actually born in LA, but moved right in the end of the Civil War of El Salvador. I told you a little bit more about my background, but also, this is kind of like where I know my passion for coffee, besides that I grew up drinking coffee since I was 2 years old, is because I was actually a migrant advisor for high schoolers that were kids of immigrant farm workers working in the Wine County in California, Sonoma and Napa, California. I worked directly with the parents, helped them, and basically saw a lot of the issues that I would, years later, will also see in El Salvador or what the coffee producing countries. Then life happened one day, and right when the pandemic, we all lost our jobs. You know, we were like, what do we do? So I decided to wake up one morning and become maybe not a coffee business, but something with coffee. And when I start telling people, hey, I know specialty coffee, there's like, you could go to school, you could get training, I want to do that. They start telling me, you should just open a coffee shop. You're too ambitious. You should just focus on one thing. There's no way you can be pushing 180 pounds of coffee.